All right, a little bit of background about myself. I'm a full-time predator hunter. I've hunted coyotes and wolves now, coyotes specifically for the last over 25 years. I got a pretty good idea how a predator thinks, especially a canid. Um, got real excited about wolf hunting, as probably some of you guys are here tonight. Um, Amongst all the political jargon that goes around surviving a wolf hunt, being able to actually partake in that is very cool. But what I will caution you guys that are going to get out there and go after them, take excitement, everything with you, go for it. But do not get discouraged when you get out there in the real world and understand that this critter is a lot harder to kill than a coyote or any other predator. Take it as it comes. Do not get discouraged. Learn from this animal. Learn travel patterns, things like that, of that nature, that's going to help you, pattern that animal and head him off at the pass, so to say. So anyway, I've hunted a lot of predators over the last 25 years. I did a lot of seminars prior to being hooked up with Bugling Bull Game Calls, which is now Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls and Supplies. So I had to do a name change. We're getting bigger. Small company. This year is our 20th year of doing business in the game call market. Our elk call line has won the last 34 out of 50 elk calling championships. Guys using our calls. We take tremendous pride in making a call that sounds real. It's not mass-produced in a factory, shove out numbers and numbers of calls. Every one of our calls are hand-tuned and hand-built in Kami, Idaho. So anyway, with that, I'm going to get going with this presentation. Wolf preservation. If we don't do our jobs as hunters and conservationists, we won't have this species for other generations to enjoy. So, bottom line, yeah, we like to hunt them and everything, but we all hunt for a reason. We conserve our game, we manage it by hunting practices and so on and so forth. So, wolf preservation, take one to a taxidermist. That's my motto. So we're going to get into calling the predator. Getting into calling a wolf has been very difficult. Not for the fact that you don't have calls, you don't have this or don't have that. When the wolf was very prevalent in this country, and a lot of guys, had hunted it, a lot of those guys are gone. And to find that information of, the tips and techniques that they used, and Mike did a great job, outstanding job of the trapping demonstrations, of showing some of that stuff that's been passed down, through generations and whatnot. But to find those guys that actually did that and find that information and garner from that information to adjust to what we have currently today, it's virtually non-existent. So we'll get in here. But first, before we call a wolf, we need to understand the wolf. Okay? They are carnivores. There's no doubt about that. They're not vegetarians, like, throwing a bucket of apples out there baiting. They're not going to go for it. Interesting fact, this is all factual information that I dug up in all my research the last couple years. Wolves require a minimum 3.7 pounds of food a day. That's just minimum body functions. That's just for everyday survival. That's the minimum food that they need. Will they get that all in a day? No. Growing, reproducing, females or the young will require 2 to 3 times that amount per day as they're growing. Female needs a lot of food to sustain those pups growing inside of her. Wolves also will go several days without a meal, and then if they get a kill with the pack or independently, whatever, they'll just sit down and gorge themselves because they haven't had any for quite a while. They don't know for sure they're going to get a next one relatively soon, so they're going to eat and they're going to eat what they can. And per wolf, on average, now this is an average, consumes 15 to 20 adult-sized game animals a year, just for survival, not counting the ones that they're killing for sport or killing to show the younger pups how it's done. Those ones aren't counted in that tally. So, wolf communication. We're going to get into the calling stuff here. You got sense of smell. They smell 100 times greater than we do as humans. Cut and dried. They can smell you coming. Play in the wind when you're out in the field. Carry one. Any of you guys got those little smoke bottles used for deer hunting? That is an essential tool for hunting wolves. Tell you the wind direction. If the wind shifts, it's going to show you what you can't see. Scent marking. They'll go into areas. They'll mark areas, but with scat, urine. They do that throughout their territory that they run. And what that does is it tells other pack members or other members of other packs that, hey, this is our territory, kind of here's your boundary, stay out of it type deal. And scent markings within the pack becomes cognizant of which, particular scent is with that animal that's in that particular pack. Therefore, they're not threatened by, this urine here, this scat, whatever, and so on and so forth. They're comfortable with what they're smelling. They're recognized as a pack member. Vocalizations. Body language, excuse me. There's a lot of stuff with body language. Mainly if you guys ever watch your dogs, is going to tell you a lot about how canines act. You guys that have hunted coyotes, by show of hands, how many of you guys have hunted coyotes? Okay, so you got a pretty good idea of what, a coyote comes into a call, body language that he's giving you. He holds up out there and kind of weary. That's what I'm talking about. Let's see. Stand by. What else do I got? Howling. Many years ago, howling became prevalent for hunting coyotes. And there's no different why it can't be that way with wolves. And what we've found out with development of the wolf howler that we have that's out there on the table, and I'll demo here in a few minutes, is that communicating with them in their language has been the better way to go so far. Distress calls, yeah, they're great, they work, but you're really trying to get into where that animal's at in their home containment area, their roaming range, and you're trying to act when you're doing vocalizations as a foreigner, as a foreign pack member. So they don't recognize that vocalization that you're giving them. You're telling them, hey, I'm in your area, and you get a howl back, and you just howl back at him the same way, and eventually he's going to get irritated enough that he's going to come check you out to run you out of their territory. So you're essentially trying to be one of their pack members, but you're not because they don't recognize you at all, and that's going to elicit the response of frustration or anger that I'm going to come and run that guy out of my territory. This is my pack, not his. Growling, pretty much, they growl to show dominance in the pack. If you've ever seen, wolf clips on YouTube, things like that, you'll see the raised jowls and teeth showing and growling and whatnot. Then you got barks and yips, which is basically, communication between pack members that are in there in the immediate group. Yips, with the pups type deal. If they're, pack members are playing around and they bite each other, going to yip, whatever. Stuff like that. This clip here, this was taken in February, and this was pretty cool. This is getting in where the wolves were. We drove in on sleds about 100 miles in the back where nobody was at. Nobody had been there yet this year. Fresh snow, Starting to turn to rain, but we'll, if it'll play here. Hello?
I've been following those tracks for about a half a mile now. I think I'm going to stop here and let out a holler on my wolf howler and see what kind of action I get.
Hear all those wolves? You can't tell me that we don't have a lot of them. Now keep in mind, notice the body postures of these dogs coming in. Tails up, woo, I'm coming in, yeehaw! One right by that tree is scent marking right there. That's the kind of stuff we have going on out west. And you know, when you go out purposely hunting these guys, at least in our area out west, and you go to ground that the elk have wintered on for the past 35 years, and you don't find a single track in 8 different locations that you know they've been there for the past 30 years, it's a humbling experience, let me tell you. But us as hunters can turn that around. And that's why I'm here to help you guys along, calling wolves, killing wolves, and managing that population. Yeah, they got a right to be here just like any other thing, but we cannot let them run free gratis, because they're just going to run it and take it and go with it, just like they've done to our elk herd back home. So we'll get into howling here. Peak howling occurs anywhere from 8 to 10 a.m. in the morning and 3 to 6 p.m. at night. They're just communicating with each other. This is where we're at. You know, this is our location. We're all kind of together. You know, everybody's talking to each other. We're bedding down for the night. Or in the morning, this is all where we're at. If any of you stragglers ran around, come on back type deal. Peak yearly howling is January through March. That's during the breeding season. When the females are out there giving breeding calls, males are answering back and forth. The rally howl, used when pack members approach one another after resting, after they get up from a night, midday nap, snooze right after a great big old elk carcass, things of that nature. Used in response, or usually by an alpha male or female will elicit that howl. Also used in response for loud noise, coyote howl, or a siren type deal. And that's going to go a little bit. Let me grab my call here. Sound a little bit like this. Now you'll notice when I'm howling with this particular call, the wolf language is heavily dependent upon that pitch change, that tone change that you hear. Ooh! That is an essential form of communication in their language. What that fully means yet, and to what extent that they use that, what frequency, what pitch it is, that's information that, like I said earlier, those guys are gone. It's hard to find that information. So, just as you guys are learning, I'm learning too. I got, 3 years of hunting these guys under my belt, and I take every time I go out in the field as a privilege to learn something else. Well, I'm going to go wolf hunting, but what am I going to learn today? Am I going to get schooled? More than likely. It's just what it is. Solo howl, just a single wolf. Doesn't have to necessarily be, totally, eerie or creepy sounding or the traditional wolf howl you'll hear on TV or whatnot. But essentially, it's just about the same, a little bit different. Pretty simple. And this call virtually takes no air to make it work. I mean, you can blow on coyote calls 10 times harder than it takes this thing to make a sound. Pup howl, obviously higher pitch, shorter duration. Pup doesn't have the size of the lungs the adults do. So there's a pup howl. Confrontation howl. This is the one that everybody says, I'm going wolf hunting. This is the howl that they're picturing in their head that you're going to hear. And this is the one essentially that we did on the video that I just showed. We got into the backcountry, way back there where nobody had been, and we got basically into their home territory. As we came in there with sleds, we noticed as we looked around the corner, walked a few ways, come back to the sleds that we had wolf tracks on the top of our sled tracks. So they were right then and there when we weren't. So then we did a confrontation howl to mimic that outcast, that's coming into somebody else's home territory and gonna try and take over the pack. That's the confrontation howl. Long, eerie, drawn out, I'm the big dog in town, come try and fight with me type thing. Well, there's a confrontation howl. Growling, you can use some of you guys that carry calls around. Imagine that, I didn't bring it up here. Anyway, just a bell on the top of your call, take it off and just growl in it. That'll get your growling good enough. Haven't really had a justifiable need for that, because usually when they're coming into a howl like you saw in the video, they're coming in and they really don't need any more coaxing. Because by that time, well, that footage stopped, the alpha male that was in the lead of that pack was out of the camera. And he's no longer living. But he came within 50 yards, while the other ones hung back on that trail like you saw. Distress calling. If you guys are going to do distress, just like vocalizations, know what you're trying to replicate. When you get into their area, the best thing that you're going to, that you can use to your advantage is find out what they're eating. And the only way you're going to find that out is if you find some scat. Find some scat, kick it around. If they've been eating bunnies or, Fifi or whoever, some deer, that's going to give you, as a hunter, a direction that you're going to go. Okay, I see that he's eating some deer, so I'm going to go out there, I'm going to do some doe in distress, something of that nature. But replicate that prey animal once you find out within that area what they're eating. This is a graph. I can go rounds and rounds about elk versus deer population. Blue represents Idaho elk population in Game Management Unit 10 and 12. 1989 through 2011, our most current numbers there. The column on the right is number of animals. So back in 89, we had just about 1,500 head of elk within these two game units. And now, you can see the dramatic decline. As soon as the wolves started getting dropped in Idaho, they moved up through Yellowstone into Montana. You got some that come down through BC and Alberta. they all kind of converge. And that convergence coupled along with the planting, and you can see the spike in the wolf numbers and the decline in the elk numbers. A lot of outfitters, gentleman earlier, he said, a lot of other guys that outfit for elk in the state of Idaho, they don't anymore. They've gone belly up because they were dependent on that elk tag to feed their clients. And if there's no elk there, why are you selling tags for guiding for elk? So it's a pretty sad situation. Like I say, when you go out there and hunt this critter, don't get discouraged. You're going to see low deer populations. You might not see the first week or first day you're out there. It's just the nature of the beast. How many guys went out deer hunting the first time and shot a deer? Yeah, maybe so if there's a heck of a population, but you know what I'm saying? The more population there is, the better chance you're going to have. But yeah, now in the state of Idaho, they're estimating, it's just an estimate. Actually, being in the real world out there in the middle of nowhere, I can believe it. There's upwards of 3,000 wolves in that entire state. And like I say, there's a good reference for a wolf track. That's a nice sized dollar bill. This last winter when we were out, I kid you not, I held my hand down. I didn't get a picture of it because I couldn't get my phone out of my pocket. So many warm clothes on. There's a wolf track bigger than my hand when I did that. And that wolf, I'm guessing, easily weighed over 200 pounds. And like I say, that's out in the middle of nowhere where nobody can get unless you got sleds to get to them. So they weren't touched. They had plenty of animals that they knew they could corral, in the draws and coulees and whatnot, and pick and choose when they were hungry to go out and, I'm hungry. I'm going to go over to the draw over there and go to the buffet and I'm going to sit down and eat. So anyway, that's kind of what I got. I'll be out there, I guess, answering questions, or we're having a round table or some sort. So if you guys got any questions, feel free. We'll be out demoing calls too. Feel free to buy some calls. But thanks to our sponsors, all the guys that sponsored us throughout the year at Bugling Bull. Great companies to work with. So anyway, thanks to SCI for having me all the way out here, 8-hour plane flight. So I fly out in the morning. So thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it.